Esports World Cup went around and they was asking different Street Fighter players which one do they think is harder, Street Fighter or Tekken to play. You had a varying different comments. Some people actually saying Tekken, some people saying Street Fighter, some people saying that Street Fighter has harder competition, but Tekken is the harder game to play. So, wanted to give it over to the panel. Which one do y'all think is the harder game? Like the hardest game to get good at, the hardest game to master, just the hardest game in general, as far as like difficulty, Street Fighter or Tekken? So we'll start with you, MC Mason.
Oh, well, this is an interesting topic for me because, playing like I actually really like Tekken. And I guess it's like it all depends, right, on like how your brain works, I think. Cause like for me, like learning be reaching competence in Tekken is like I wouldn't say like it's I don't know. I take to that game a little bit more than I do with like Street Fighter, and I guess it's just like that's just how my brain works, because so for me, playing Street Fighter, I guess like initially was more difficult, because I'm playing because when I'm as a mostly Tekken player, you come into Street Fighter trying to play Street Fighter like Tekken, pretty much, and it just you can't really play it like that. There's no like Korean backdash or anything. So, but I don't know, man. And like Tekken, there's like so many. There's like everybody has like 100 moves, and I mean like there's only so many moves you're going to have to prepare for, but there, of course, there are always going to be outliers of moves that are used to like kind of throw you off. Like on Street Fighter, kind of have an idea of what everybody can do because they have like kind of a limited like move set, you know. And but I would say that I feel like the combos in Street Fighter sometimes are, at least for me, are a little bit more difficult. Like in Tekken, I feel like it's easier for me to visually confirm what is going on in like a Tekken combo. Like I'm like, okay, I'm doing a combo and they're right here they're falling down, they're right here exactly where I need them to be. So I hit them with the down forward one, and then I hold forward, and then I do down forward one again, and then they're still falling. So I do down forward two, and then they spiral, and then I run up, that kind of thing. But I don't know, like it's tough, man, because
Conversions are hard in both of them.
it's tough because it's like in Street Fighter, it's like you kind of have to have faith that the combo is going to hit, and then like you kind of have to when you're in the middle of doing a combo sometimes, and let's say that you didn't quite do it right, and they start blocking, you gotta like know to slam the brakes on like immediately and just be like, oh man, this is not this. I gotta back out of this situation because that route is gone, bro. Like if I go any further and get the deeper you get, the more likely you're gonna get like seriously punished. So I don't know, man. I I really can't say. I will say for me, I would say that Street Fighter is tougher. Like just Street Fighter. Street Fighter is just the tougher game to me. Not to say that Tekken isn't a hard game because it is a hard game, but for me, learning Street Fighter has been like it's I I don't know, man. Like there's a whole lot going on in Street Fighter that I just can't quite like wrap my head around sometimes, especially with trying to dial in my combos. So I feel like I'm got like in Tekken, there's like when I'm doing a combo, there's a certain flow that feels a lot more natural to me. So for me, I'll say Street Fighter is tougher.
It's on you, Mister. I played everything and mastered all.
That's not true, but I think honestly, just like both, I feel both Street Fighter and Tekken, the competition pool is about the same. Like there's a bunch of killers from everywhere in Tekken and Street Fighter. I mean, especially now, like since the game has gotten more popular over the years and exploded, like both games to me, the competition is there. It's not like you playing. It's not like when you go to competitions or something like that or events, you playing against Johnny Pancakes 55. Like you playing against some heavy hitters out here, man. And Arson the Ass is gonna be somewhere in the background, gonna take your. He's just waiting to take your happiness from you. But I gotta say Tekken, man. Like Tekken is again. I've said this before. I said this about Virtua Fighter, how 3D games are more intuitive from the jump. Just like basically, like the input system is a lot more easier to understand. It's more it's more of a direct input into like a immediate feedback loop. You press buttons. You might just press a random string of triangle X if you're on PlayStation, triangle X circle, and get a string to come out. In Street Fighter, that's not the case. You just can't get stuff to come out like that. But when it gets to like a harder, like a deeper level of Tekken, it's just too much stuff with Tekken. 3D fighters, you have the wall. You gotta learn how to get off the ground. You gotta learn if do I roll off the ground, do I roll sideways, tech traps, all this stuff is like if you don't know that stuff, you'll get demolished by somebody that knows how to exploit that stuff. Tekken grabs, I promise I hate taking grabs in probably Mortal Kombat the most because it's just such a random thing. Like it should just be like Street Fighter. But in Tekken, at least you can see the arm. But it's really hard, like learning to train your eyes to see which arm they grab you with. Oh, did they grab me with the left arm? And then they might be on opposite sides, so it's like it looks like they grab you with the opposite arm, but it's actually supposed to be like a one tech, which is the square button for your left arm. And then did he grab me with two arms? It's hard to train your eyes to see that type of stuff. So that's hard. King, like learning like when to break stuff and like these chain grabs. You got, like I said, getting off the ground, like people doing it was at a mid, or they're doing lows. It's a lot of stuff that goes into Tekken. The move list, everybody got like 90 to 100 moves. Granted, maybe like a fourth of those moves you're gonna really use on the regular, but still, it's like a lot of stuff to learn. Street Fighter, Ryu got like at a base level throughout history. Street Fighters, Ryu's had what? Hadouken, Shoryuken, Tatsumaki. He's just now like getting newer stuff, but for the most part, that's been what he had. Gal, what he got? Sonic Boom, Flash Kick. That's still basically what he got. He got like one new move though. So it's like learning that stuff is just and keeping it in mind. There's so many more characters, the matchups you got to learn. It's just like you got execution in these games. You got just frame attacks, which is basically kind of in the territory of like one frame links and stuff. You got to let you win God Fist. Like being consistent with that, like being able to do that like all the time. That stuff is hard. The taunt jet upper with Brian, like learning how to do the taunt into the jet, like this stuff is some hard stuff in Tekken. Like Tekken is a hard game to play, and especially depending on what character you play. Playing a character like Harong, like it's all the different intricacies and the stances and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, to me, I feel like I've had more time. Well, over the past like decade, I've spent more time with Street Fighter, but I've always played Tekken as well. But I've usually like when it comes to playing online, I've spent more time in Street Fighter. But it's a hard game. It's a real hard game to learn. Even movement. It's a game with Street Fighter. You don't really have to learn movement like that because there's not really
that's
much
one
movement.
of the biggest things to me, movement.
Yeah.
Movement, man.
Like learning the KBD, like it's like if you don't know a KBD or stuff like that against like competent players, you'll never be able to get away from them. Which they made it worse in Tekken 8. Like in Tekken 7, you could like kind of play the field, but it's just the movement, the sidestepping. There's some moves you can avoid a move if you step to the screen to the left, to the right, or if you move this way, you can't block his move. You can't avoid his move. Period. It's too much in Tekken, man.
Yeah,
So I gotta go with Tekken.
Have weak and strong sides.
Yeah.
Well, coming from a person that's been trash at everything he's ever touched, I don't know. It's like you kind of gotta you kind of want to break it down. Like with both games, like what does the floor level look like? What does the ceiling look like? And then how easy is it for to even get competent at that floor level? I think when it comes to Street Fighter, it's a little bit tougher to figure out what you're doing, like to learn like the basics and get started in Street Fighter than it is in Tekken. Because with Tekken, that's one of the great things about 3D. You feel more free. You can kind of just throw stuff out. You can press buttons and, like for example, I remember playing Soul Calibur. Like if you were just a random person that just got in and started pressing buttons, like with Nightmare, like you could probably like get a bunch of wins, just doing like wonky stuff in the beginning, like just move left, right, throw the sword, flip them up, launch them, all this other. You could. So I feel like with 3D games, it's a little bit easier to get in and just start throwing stuff out than it is in Street Fighter, where it's just 2D. You're on a frame. Your movement is so limited. Like you could throw out stuff, but it's not like you can whiff like and start whiffing out like crazy stuff, doing like combo, anything that if anybody saw you just like whiffing, just jamming stuff, they'd be like, okay, let me just go back and start zoning this dude. Like, because obviously you just obviously you don't know what you're doing. So I think like the floor level to getting in with Street Fighter is a little bit easier. But when you start talking about like getting good at the game, getting proficient at the game, it's just when you take the 3D element in general is just going to be so much more that you have to know about, deal with, and worry about. Like that, I can't say nothing more than anybody has said here before, but just the amount of stuff that you have, the knowledge that you have to know in Tekken, like the amount of moves that they have, the things that you have to be aware of, and then knowing like all these different matchups for the different characters, it's a lot. And just adding on like just simply it being 3D and you have to like they said, like if you know somebody that know Korean backdash and you don't, like almost like your hope leaves. Like that it's basically just it, you know. Um when it comes to combos and like these different games, I mean, I guess it at that point it's just like what's your flavor, because like in Street Fighter, like to do combos, like one, not only do you got to know your party starters, but you got to like understand timing, you got to understand the frames, like in between each move and how they connect, and being like and sequentially doing them. But then when it comes to Tekken, a lot of times most of your combos are going to come off after launcher, so it's like you got to get that launcher. Like you got to be able to, launch somebody in the air, and then after that, you got to get the concept of juggling, and then after that, like it's on a 3D aspect in the 3D plane. So it's like, do you know how to convert a lot of this stuff? Because a lot of times you might be up against a wall or something, you hit somebody, and then next thing you know, the physics do something crazy. They go a weird type of way. You got to know how to convert that. Like, can you take that opportunity? And a lot of times in Street Fighter, the conversions are straightforward with it being on a 2D plane. It's not like I'm gonna hit you. Like, yeah, doing stuff in the corner might be different than doing stuff in open space. But if I hit you in the corner, it's not like in 3D where you can mess around and fly out the corner or something like that. So it's like conversions are a little bit different. um I just really think like overall, like I've always just personally thought that 3D games were easier to get into but harder to master, and like Street Fighter is a game that's harder to get into because like in the beginning with Street Fighter, I mean, like it was tough to learn, like, doing supers. When you first starting to learn out how to do it, you really ain't got to worry about that too much. And like Tekken, yeah, nowadays they got like the rage arts and all that other stuff, but we kind of also talking about like back then with Tekken when you really didn't have to learn all that stuff. So it's give and takes in both. Like you can make a case with both. But at the end of the day, I just think in general, 3D fighters are just harder to get good at and get proficient at and decide you're gonna go into tournaments and all that other stuff than it is 2D games. Like it just is. So that's just my opinion. I really do think 3D games, like they're not as popular as like 2D, and I think that might be another reason that they are more difficult. Like, I mean, my goodness, I've honestly, and this gonna sound mad disrespectful. I honestly feel like if I hopped in the ring with like Punk right now, like I feel like I could at least get more hits than I would if I hopped in the ring right now with Arslan Ash. Like I feel like Arslan Ash would probably make me want to dispose of my thumbs. Like I just have no use for these anymore. Like I have just failed my thumbs. Like so, that's just my opinion. No disrespect to Punk, we know he's an amazing player, but like when it comes to like Tekken, man, you step in the ring with like these Pakistani players. I mean, Knee, like these Knee like the nicest person in the world and violate you. But anybody else got anything there?
Yeah, one of my things is like when I'm playing like Tekken, I don't know, I feel like when you're talking about being more free in playing like 3D fighters, I kind of feel that, and I guess that's why like I kind of feel I feel like that certain freeness that you're talking about when you're playing 3D fighters, because like to me, 2D fighters feel kind of claustrophobic, like and especially
Yeah,
like when you're getting to a corner, when you're getting backed into a corner, at least the only like in Street Fighter, my only real option is to either A, fight my way out, or B, try to jump over them and that can also end in tragedy. Like, you know, especially now we have like drive impacts because somebody might hit you, like you jump at the wrong time, you get hit with a drive impact, and now you're on the wall, or you're in burnout, you get hit with a drive impact, and now you're stunned. And I think like that's another thing. Like, there's no real like stun mechanic in Tekken, so there's always kind of like, you know, like most of the time you're not going to be in a situation where you're just kind of standing there and they can just kind of have their way with you. You know what I mean? And then in addition to that, I guess like we're talking going back to the concept of being free on like the 3D fighter. Like if I'm getting into a corner, if I'm smart about it, I can sidestep out of that. You know
Yeah,
what I
just
mean? Like
sidestep.
yeah, I can sidestep out of it. You know, sidestep block, sidestep block. You know, there are tracking moves, but you can still block, right? Like there's you know like it's all like about maneuvering and stuff like that. You know, trying to stay. You got to be. It's the concept remains the same against in both games, right? You got to be aware of your surroundings, aware of your positioning, and all of that. You know, I don't know. It's you know, and I think you know, I don't know. Like I just I it Tekken feels a little bit more fluid to me in that regard. Like it feels like that kind of game that I take to a little bit more because I'm not going to say, like I said, I'm not going to say it's easier, but I will say that like comparatively for me playing in a game where I feel like there's only basically one way out and like to get like I got to either fight my way out or put myself in what might be a compromising position to get out of the corner, you know, like whereas in Tekken, as long as I'm kind of like moving around a little bit more and kind of like threatening moves, I say, all right, I'm gonna do this move, and they back up. Okay, great. I can kind of sidestep my way out of the corner because yeah, that is definitely not a place you want to be in Tekken. You do not want to be next to a wall. that is that is
Before
not great.
Street Fighter 6, weren't 3D games like your primary games that you played?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, like three Tekken 7, Soul Calibur 6, and whatnot, Virtual Fighter 5. You know, that
Yeah, because Street Fighter is one of the 2D games that's more like strict and like E said, people can feel like claustrophobic on movement because you have 2D games that aren't like that. They have more free range movement. I mean, you have like anime games, you know, you could probably feel more free and stuff in an anime game, anime fighter than you would in like Street Fighter or even like a Marvel versus Capcom or Tag Fighter. You know, you'd probably have like a lot more freedom and stuff of movement, but Street Fighter is kind of one of those games to where like it does feel a little bit more like, restrictive on how you can move and stuff like that. You know, some people might find it weird that, shoot, coming from like Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. I'm sure people played that their whole life. It's like, it's weird that the back is actually the block. Like, I can
yeah.
understand some people that say I actually like a button more for block than I would like, actually like shoot, I was just trying to move back and he caved me in the mouth. Like I'd rather have a button that I could just, press than it's just I'm trying to go back. And if somebody gets me in the situation, back is no longer back. Back is like I'm stuck, like, in frame, like trying to, block stun, trying to get up out of here. And it's just like, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought about like even the stages. You got to learn how to fight on stages. Like you can't fight on every stage the same because you got destructible walls, you got destructible floors. Some stages are infinite, so it's just like
most times you got to worry about ring outs in 3Ds too.
yeah. So it's just like all of that. I feel like 3D games are hard. Like Tekken, especially certain characters are harder to follow visually. Um, like you fight against a Eddie Gordo or Harang, what's his name? Fang Wei, Zafina. All these characters are so like unorthodox. Like they have attacks that like Fang Wei, I believe he has one stupid attack where he like flails his arm and like there's a certain attack he has. It looks like it's a certain like it's either a high but it's a low, and there's stuff like that in other games too. But it's like if you don't know those moves
Windmill.
and strings, if you don't understand those things, like you're gonna get like mollywopped. And I think it's just a lot more compartmentalized. Like in Street Fighter, you can like kind of assess what's going on. But when you got a character like Fang Wei and you never played against him, you probably gonna get mocked. Like that's why the thing with Harong and Eddie, like people pick those characters. It's like people think they have good Eddies and good Harongs. Like no, you don't really. It's just that most people you play against in Tekken have not actually practiced against those characters. They don't know those characters' moveset. They haven't practiced like where to block. So that's why you just run over people. That's another thing with like these 3D games. Like you get characters like that and you just run over people because they haven't practiced the frames and stuff like that. But once you get somebody that's competent, now your Eddie's not getting anything. It's like, oh, I thought I had a good Eddie. No, you just was playing against people that just weren't familiar with your character.
Didn't know how to block low.
So like when you get into like 3D games like that, those characters, they will run over you because it's just like, what do I block? What's going on? What is he doing? You know, Fang Wei, stop doing your chicken dance and fight me, you know.
Yeah, like in 3D games, they do have those characters that is just like they could just be consistently, they just won't stop moving. Like Eddie Gordo, if you go to Soul Calibur, I used to hate fighting Maxis. Like people just, the nunchucks just don't stop. Like, can you at least think about what you're doing before you press the next button? Just stop.
I did.
You know? Like consistently moving, like relax, bro. But go ahead, Eve.
You know, like it's like I feel that kind of way, like, you know, Mr. Gamelist is talking about, like you guys are talking about like characters that, you know, if you don't know how they work, then you're just gonna get like steamrolled. Like even like in like when I was playing Street Fighter, it's like you're playing so if you don't know how to fight Dalsim, you're probably going to lose. Like, I mean, if you're not really familiar with how that character works, especially the way he works in Street Fighter 6, he's just like I remember I was in a chat with what was it, Dr. African, and he was saying he was like, you know, it's like people who are like you're playing Dalsim, and it's like, bro, how do you know that you're good at Street Fighter? You play Dalsim, bro. like how do you know that you're good at Street Fighter? You're playing Dalsim. You're playing like a completely different game, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of because like half the time, like if you've never played Dalsim before, you don't know that a lot of that stuff that he's doing is punishable. You know what I mean? Like all those long attacks, and chances are you might not even get to lay a finger on him. You know, he's over throwing fireballs and stuff like that, doing these crazy setups, teleporting behind you. You're backing up. He finally got you to like, put you on the back foot. You're backing up. He teleports behind you, and now you're moving into a fist. You know, I don't know, man. Like it's a rough proposition to deal with a character like that, especially if you don't know the properties of that character. And then what happens when he puts you in a corner? Like I said, there's only two ways out the corner at that point. You gotta like either jump out and hope nothing happens to you, or you gotta fight your way out. But if this dude's using stretchy limbs and stuff, he's got like these long kicks from like a million miles away. Before you know it, like this guy perfected you, and you never got like past half the stage. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, in